A lot of things are changing, and to set the tone for this video, I'm going to open with a promise that has been made to all of us by the new boss of Xbox. As monetization and AI evolve and influence this future, we will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop. Now, those are the words of Xbox's new boss, Asha Sharma, and on their own, they're actually good words. I think we can all get behind that. They would maybe give you some hope that the new Xbox would avoid the worst tendencies of Microsoft. But the thing is that up until this week, Asha Sharma was president of Microsoft Core AI. And as much as, say, the OpenAI codexes or Claude codes of the world seem to be being quite successful, when it comes to consumer and business AI, Microsoft is kind of specifically known for being sloppy and being really quite bad. So as much as she's opened her tenure with that good statement that is trying to meet a lot of our concerns and the sort of angst of the day, I'm not necessarily sure how much I'm willing to trust it. Though this story isn't just about Asha. Of course, Phil Spencer is gone. Sarah Bond is gone. And rather dramatically, when everyone was writing their memo saying farewell or saying hello, only Phil Spencer mentioned Sarah Bond. The rest didn't, and that will seemingly mix in with what some people are leaking. We'll get to that later, but first, we need to talk about how the story broke. It all went down last thing on a Friday afternoon. That's when Microsoft and Xbox decided to announce their biggest shakeup in over 2 decades. And I could read you the various memos in full, but I'll just paraphrase to save you time. So, Xbox CEO Phil Spencer is retiring. He spent 38 years at Microsoft. Fair enough. And in theory, it is the perfect year to retire. It's the 25th anniversary of the launch of the first Xbox. That feels like a natural moment to pass on the torch. But if that was the reason for all of this change, then why is it happening before the celebrations have even began? Now, to understand the reason for this change, we gotta look at the new boss. So, Asha Sharma is CEO, and she's an interesting person when you go through her career history. It is telling, and I'll run you through it. She spent 2 years in marketing at Microsoft. Then, as COO, she helped to found and establish an online home contractor service called Porch. She spent 4 years at Meta as VP of Product Engineering, specifically working on Messenger and Instagram. Then she, I think, went a little bit up the ladder again because she was COO at Instacart, but with a very important job for a company like that. She was preparing the company for its stock market listing. She had direct responsibility for profit and loss. So you can see she's had a lot of responsibility, and generically, she's got a skill set that could be valuable to a company like Microsoft. She's also on the boards of some companies like a South Korean e-commerce company and Home Depot. Now, in 2024, she goes back to Microsoft as CVP Head of Product for Microsoft's AI platforms, and then she goes on to be President of Core AI Product, which to many is the especially worrying part, considering the likes of, say, Call of Duty right now. Sharma promises, quote, no AI slop. I do have to wonder if she had to ask Satya Nadella permission to use that phrase, because he's on the record as hating the word slop. But obviously, reading that statement, we're all thinking about the AI slop that's ended up in Call of Duty. Now, Phil Spencer had already been on record stating the developers had free reign on all of that tech, and that for the majority, it was only used on operational things like, say, moderation. And that'd be fairly easy to disprove if it were untrue. So instead, our real focus should be on her role as product executive. That is someone who builds up products, knows market fit, and builds audiences. That's not nothing, and maybe not a bad fit for Xbox. I mean, the group's problem for the last decade has been that what Xbox means and is keeps on changing. And believe me, there's drama in that, and we will get to that shortly because it's pretty much all falling on one person, at least per some leaks. But this appointment reflects a moment for change, especially because, unlike with Phil Spencer, she's not stepping up to this role from within Xbox. She's coming over from Microsoft's most profitable venture in decades. Now, her lack of industry-specific experience may obviously be a problem. And as good as her engagement posting on Twitter about liking Halo, Valheim, and GoldenEye is fine and well, it's obviously not the same thing as having real experience of how the games industry actually works. But obviously, you don't need to be Phil Spencer wearing a graphic tee and staggering playtimes to run a games company. A lot of people would hate to hear it, but technically speaking, the most successful of them is Bobby Kotick. As long as you're willing to learn and make good products, outside experience is absolutely not automatically a bad thing. But the way that this leadership came about, that may be a bit different. And it's hard not to read it as Microsoft bringing someone in to run Xbox in a way that is in line with their wishes. But first, there's something new that lives in my backpack every day. It's an IRL upgrade, and it's from our sponsor Ugreen, and it's amazing. This is their new 6-in-1 USB-C hub. It lives in my bag, and here is why, right? You see, not long ago, getting 4K 60 output, 10 gigabit data ports, 100-watt pass-through, all of that stuff, and as reliably as I have it in this, that meant clunky docks that cost a fortune would sit in your desk. This is 69 grams. It's tiny, and it does not cut corners. I can plug one cable into my MacBook Pro, and I have a full workstation of connectivity. Display out at 4K 60, 4 data ports all running at 10 gigabit, and it charges my laptop through the USB-C PD port at 85 watts. It just handles whatever I need, wherever I go, and so much more reliably than, well, products like this used to in the past. These have got so damn good. So, it's brilliant, works with basically everything, your MacBook, Windows, iPad Pro, Steam Deck, iPhone 17, all of the things. And the performance you're getting for this price is pretty damn absurd, and you can check it out at the link below. Ugreen are absolute price to performance kings, and the likes of this are why. What happened to the old boss? Well, a year ago, rumors started that Phil Spencer wanted to retire. He was asked about it directly by Destin Legarie in January, and he said he had no such plans. Now, in July, rumors began to spread that Spencer would step down after the next console launched, with the plan being that President Sarah Bond would take over. But that was also debunked, and it was debunked by Microsoft's Chief Communications Officer. Now, according to memos released last week, Phil Spencer changed his mind, and he started talking to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella in late autumn of 2025. They made a decision, and while he'll be hanging around to advise Sharma till the summer, he is out. If we're approaching this skeptically, then that timeline does align very cleanly with Xbox suffering a massive drop in Call of Duty sales last year. Now, I don't think it would be fair to blame Phil Spencer for those sales. I think that would really be quite ridiculous. It seems the Call of Duty development problems are very much stemming from legacy decisions of Activision leadership. But it is true that going from the best-selling game to 5th best-selling game of the year does a hell of a lot more damage to, say, your quarterly revenue than something like The Outer Worlds 2 underperforming, to the tune specifically of a 9% drop year on year, which is brutal. And maybe that gets the wheels spinning at Microsoft. I mean, several years of Xbox only keeping their head above water. Layoffs and cancelled games driven by a need to show more profit, especially when multiple reports say that last year's layoffs were specifically to free up funds, future funding for AI. Now, maybe Spencer makes this choice on his own to step aside. Maybe he sees the way the wind is blowing and decides, you know what, I'm getting off this train. But insiders speaking to the likes of Greg Miller at Kinda Funny are saying that this was not planned, especially because at least one aspect of the changeover feels like it would not have happened under different circumstances. As for who's left, well, there's Matt Booty, formerly head of Xbox Game Studios, who has been promoted to EVP and Chief Content Officer. But he's not the president of Xbox, and that's because there's someone missing from these statements. From Nadella's statement, from Sharma's statement, and even from Matt Booty's statement. And that person is Sarah Bond, the woman who was president of Xbox since 2023, simply resigned. We found out that she had resigned. Very few people were talking about her. Now, she was framed in every way as Phil Spencer's successor, and according to The Verge, she was the person leading the quite disastrous "This is an Xbox" marketing campaign, which was one designed to expand the audience for their games. Now, this allegedly put her at odds with internal skeptics who were, quote, offended at the lack of focus on consoles. Of course, the consoles weren't really selling, and, well, Xbox's console sales have only got worse over time. And this raises eyebrows because, as it had been framed, if Spencer were to hand the torch to anyone, it was expected to be her. And now the new CEO is a product-focused executive for Microsoft's fastest-growing division, who has been moved over to Xbox, which pretty much is their most turbulent division. I can't sum up the state of Xbox in general better than actually Phil Spencer. He said this, quote, "We lost the worst generation to lose." That was Phil's summation of Xbox's woes back in 2023 when he was speaking to Kinda Funny's Xcast. Now, that makes sense in context because he had been brought in just after the disastrous reveal and launch of the Xbox One. I'm sure you remember TV, sports, and all of that. Now, throughout his tenure, Xbox basically could not convince people to leave their PlayStations once they were entrenched in Sony's ecosystem, and every change afterward was basically about finding new ways to run the business. That meant doing things like acquiring Minecraft, which was great for the bottom line. They would also want more games, and one way to do that was Activision Blizzard. Obviously, that was not as good for their bottom line after all the regulatory fighting and the fairly huge amount of money involved. Now, of course, there was Game Pass. It was the best deal in gaming right up until it had to be more profitable, so they changed the prices substantially. Multiple times. But through it, you do see the strategy. It's all about expanding. They opened up Xbox games to PC players. That's another way to expand the market. And now they are selling Xbox games to PlayStation players, meaning there is firmly no reason to buy an Xbox. And all this turbulence appears to have put them at odds with Microsoft, a group who wanted consistent, managed growth, and for Xbox to be able to pay its own way so that the larger corporate entity could focus on, say, the likes of its AI strategy. Now, when we talked about the layoffs in the summer of 2025, we noted that Spencer had positioned Xbox as being separate from Microsoft. His memo framed the decision as a requirement to, quote, "follow Microsoft's lead." And Kotaku pointed out the same thing at the Summer Games Fest, how Xbox had to be, quote, "accountable to Microsoft." This new language started to bleed into their public communications. Now, I do need to say that Microsoft has told CNBC that a reported target of a 30% profit margin for Xbox is, quote, "incorrect." But that framing keeps coming back, and supposedly it's from Microsoft CFO Amy Hood directly. Now, there's always been an undertone that Xbox's worst choices, the layoffs, the cancellations of medium to long-term projects, the push for just more and more players by being on, I don't know, a smart TV, maybe a smart fridge, who knows? But the undertone was that that was downstream of pressure from Microsoft, and that Spencer and Bond essentially mitigated the worst of the damage as best as they could. Which does not relieve them of responsibility, because there was still a shitload of damage, a lot poorly mitigated. I mean, Redfall famously was a flop, and a flop that seemed to happen because Xbox just gave ZeniMax free rein to keep doing what they were doing. And allegedly that approach has also led to crunch and harassment at studios under their watch. Development timelines, of course, have ballooned across the board, but at their core, it did seem that they cared about putting out games and making Xbox as a gaming division of Microsoft work, perhaps in spite of Microsoft. That framing of defending Xbox from some of the corporate demands of Microsoft, I think that feels understandable to people given that Spencer came up at Xbox. Obviously now we have new leadership handpicked by Microsoft. They're not guaranteed to share those same principles. What does it mean for the future? Well, Matt Booty has promised no layoffs for Xbox staff in the wake of these changes, and we still expect to see Xbox's big franchises, Forza, Fable, Halo, Gears of War, all deliver this year. I mean, it still is the whole 25th anniversary of Xbox thing that they have tried to align a bunch of releases for. Sharma does inherit all the decisions and the policies that Xbox already had under Spencer and Bond, and that means there will be a lag time as these things already in motion play out. We won't know what she'll change until we see it, until some time has passed. But I think what we can say is that Sharma was not given this role as a continuity candidate. There's perhaps other people who were expected to have filled that role if continuity is what you had wanted. And the key thing is for us to read the final lines of her memo to staff. Here it is. "I want to return to the renegade spirit that built Xbox in the first place. It will require us to relentlessly question everything, revisit processes, protect what works, and be brave enough to change what does not." Sounds good in theory, but there's a story that kept coming up during Spencer's time at Xbox, and it may be the real thing to focus on here. You see, when Phil Spencer was hired in 2014, Nadella was considering closing Xbox, just stopping it. Spencer convinced him otherwise, based on his belief in Xbox as a business and the teams he was running as the head of games. Now, per a report from The Information that I need to say Microsoft has denied, Satya Nadella was considering closing Xbox down again in 2021. Obviously, that didn't happen, and they committed to a fairly serious expansion in the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. But if that conversation happens for a third time, under Sharma, what will Satya Nadella say? And going into the next generation of consoles, do you believe Microsoft will be in any better footing? And in a case like that, will Satya want to bother? Honestly, I don't expect that he will, but over the next few years, I'm fairly sure we're going to find out. And for the perfect follow-up to this story, check out what's going on at Remedy. They're in an extremely precarious situation. Strategy failed, old CEOs left, and the new CEO's job history has a lot of Remedy's core fans absolutely bricking it. If you want to learn what's up, watch that video next.